Hello to all you supernatural enthusiasts who wish to seek the truth of what's on the other side, or just to get a few goosebumps, get the willies, something to keep you up at night. My name is Karen, and I am here to hopefully help you explore that. I'd like to tell you just a few things about myself. I'm not going to go on and on because that'll get very boring, and especially for me. I have had interest in the paranormal since I was knee-high to a grasshopper. That might sound kind of weird, but I guess it's because I had some imaginary friends who may not have actually been imaginary. I would freak my family out by talking to someone or something in corners of rooms and closets and little old ladies, invisible little old ladies in a mall or a grocery store, that kind of thing. And I kind of remember that because to me, they were real. As I got older and realized that maybe I was a little different, I still was open to these things. I wasn't really afraid, unless, it was a creepy, scary thing, but I kind of shut that part of myself down. Well, because people would say negative things about that, or grow up, you can't have imaginary friends anymore, that kind of thing. When I was about 15, 16, I started to spend some time at a relative's home, and their grandmother, when she died, stayed. I'd hear her walking back and forth, and it wasn't a scary thing. We just knew that grandma was there. She would follow the path of the same things that she would do, and you could sense her presence. You could smell her perfume. Then I went off to university. And this is the story that I want to tell you about today. This is the thing that led me to become a paranormal investigator. I didn't realize this until years later. So, this is the story I am going to tell you about today. Fasten up your seatbelts so we can go on a little joyride to the underbelly of the dark part of the supernatural world. I just like saying things like that. It's fun. Anyway, when I was 18 years old, I was about to embark on my university education out of town. I was about 6 hours away from home. I was a young and silly little thing and waited to the last minute to look for accommodations, to look for a place to live. I just assumed, big city, university, no problem. In fact, this is a city of 2 universities, and, well, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. I worked at a bar in the summertime and found out that someone that worked there was also going to the same university, Carleton University in Ottawa. So we said, hey, why don't we get an apartment together? We packed up his van and we headed to Ottawa and realized pretty quickly that we were screwed. The first night we slept in his van on a mattress, and the next day we were starting to freak out a little bit. Went to the university, looked at some ads for accommodations, just couldn't find a thing. So then we proceeded to look in the newspaper classified type thing. We saw a listing for a 2-story home that you could rent the upstairs or downstairs for cheap. Sounds good, not too far away from the university. So we went there, met with the landlord, and he said he's just going to rent it out for this year and then he's going to tear it down and build up a new home. We should have known right then that the place wouldn't have been in the greatest condition, but our standards weren't all that high at that point. So we went to look into the downstairs apartment. I'm telling you the honest to God truth. If there were smartphones in those days, I would have taken some pictures and have some proof, but you're just going to have to trust me on this. When we entered the apartment, it stunk. It was really bad. And on the walls were satanic markings, symbols. On the floor, there was a pentagram with candles around it at the points, used, melted. There were chicken feathers all over the place and empty rum bottles, and there was blood. Different spots of this room. We didn't venture to look at the other parts because we were like, nah, I don't think this one's for us. And the landlord said, look, if you clean it up, I'll take $100 off your first month's rent. That didn't seem to be worth it to us. And again, didn't really clue in that this could lead to some problems in the upstairs apartment. So he took us to the front porch and a very long, steep, darkly lit staircase. The light didn't work. He said, oh, I'll come back and I'll fix that light for you. We went upstairs. We looked around and it was clean. It was old, but it was clean. Had a nice big kitchen, nice front living room, 2 nice bedrooms, and a decent sized bathroom. Thought, hey, this is great. Totally forgot about the downstairs. The rent was cheap. $350 a month, split between 2 people. Can't beat that. So we set up home, started off on our university careers, and off we went. Only in a short period of time, we started to feel sick when we were at home. Didn't really think much of it, just because, we were both working part-time and going to school feeling tired. Now, I'm a pretty laid-back person, at least I can be, especially when I was younger, and my roommate was super laid-back. He was like a hippie dude. And we started to kind of bark at each other, get on each other's nerves, which didn't make any sense, but we just didn't feel right when we were in there. Now, this is me looking back at this. At the time, didn't really notice it, except for maybe I should have got to know this guy better before we became roommates, but we knew each other all summer. And he was thinking the same thing, but of course we didn't discuss this. Crazy things started to happen. One night when we were watching TV, his alarm went off. It was set for 7 a.m, but it went off at 10 o'clock at night. He says to me, that's not funny. Don't mess around with my alarm. I got to get to work. I got to get to school. I said, look, man, I didn't do this. He's like, doesn't believe me. Thinks I'm screwing with him. I wasn't. Why would I want to screw with him? Anyway, this happens a few more times. He's getting kind of pissed at me, but then I could tell he's getting nervous because, why would I do that? Next, this dude loved tea, like all day. One night evening again, we were doing homework, watching some TV, and the kettle starts whistling. He's like, weren't you just in the kitchen? Did you turn the kettle on? No, man, I didn't turn the kettle on. I don't know what's going on. Go out, kettle's whistling, burner's on full blast. What the hell? He's in denial. I'm like, no, man, this place is haunted. There's some crazy stuff going on. He's Mr. Logical because he's going to law school. So we can't agree on this at all. And as time went on, the burners would come on out of nowhere, which is kind of scary because I don't know if this happened when we were at school work. Then the taps started turning on their own. Out of nowhere, tap, full blast. Didn't turn itself off, but it would turn on. Then drawers would open. You'd hear clinging of cutlery, that kind of stuff. Craziness. Then the curtains in the bathroom started to open and close. I was getting really freaked out, but I was stuck. I had nowhere to live, and I wasn't going to go back home and give up going to university. So I got myself a cat, a little black cat. No correlation. He just was. I called him Cicero because I thought I was so very clever. It was one of the books I was reading in English class. And he would watch things. He'd look around the room, and of course there was nothing there. I'd be like, what are you seeing, man? What are you seeing? Of course, he couldn't answer me. But in my head, I was like, holy crap, this cat is seeing stuff. There was plastic on the windows because in Ottawa, the winters would get to like 20, 30 below, sometimes 40 below, depending. And the drapes would sway back and forth. So things were they were ramping up. Finally, my roommate admitted to the fact that he couldn't explain what was going on, and he was freaked out. I was freaked out. He went home one weekend, and I was there by myself, and I was like, all right, be cool. Everything's going to be fine. I fell asleep, and without a word of a lie, I woke up crossing the street in my pajamas. Now, I have never, nor have I since, sleptwalked. I somehow made it down this crazy steep staircase, out through the porch, and crossing a busy street. Thank God it was late at night, 2, 3 in the morning. And whatever woke me up, woke me up. I could not believe it. I was like, this is pure insanity. I was scared. I didn't want to go back into the place. Here's the thing. When I went to go back in, the door was locked. Now, this is not a locking door, meaning I on its own. It's not self-locking. I would have a key. So here I am in my freaking pajamas early in the morning, and I can't get into my house. Now, the one saving grace in the area that brought me some comfort is that practically in our backyard, there was a police station. So I walk over in my jammies to the police station. They looked at me like I was on crack initially, and I told them what happened. They were really good about it. They helped me get into the apartment, and there I was back. And the light to the stairs was on. You have to understand, this light had never worked, and the switch was in the off position. Though the off could have been on, with these older houses and the wiring. But still, this light was on. My landlord hadn't come to fix it. I go back up the stairs. I go to sleep. I have my blankets over my head. Thank God my mattress was on the floor. I didn't have a frame, so nothing could be under the bed. Squeezed my cat close next to me, and that was that experience. So these types of things continued to happen. Walter and I ended up taking our mattresses and moving into the front room together, closing the door and bringing some comfort that at least we were together at night. It was just insanity. So I got a little brave. We had an attic above us. Of course, it was an attic below us or beside us. There was an attic above us, and I thought, I'm going to go check up things upstairs. I had one of those little staircases that came down, ladder things. I went up, and it was dusty and creepy, and there was boxes and stuff all over the place. But one of the first things that I noticed was that there were pictures of a family and some kids. They were just sort of lying on the floor, maybe from the 70s. And I don't know if there's any correlation, but they just didn't look right. They had this sort of Stepford Wives. Do you remember the haircut from Poltergeist? That little girl that had the blonde white hair with this bangs haircut? They all kind of had that. The boys, a mushroom cut, and the father had a weird short mushroom cutty thing. Anyway, I was like, all right, all right, I'm done. Went downstairs. Finally, Walter and I sought out a paranormal group that came in, and they're like, this place is definitely haunted. Don't know what's going on. Told them about the downstairs, and they're like, I think you need to leave. We're like, we can't leave. Where are we going to go? So they tried to do some cleansing, that type of stuff. And by then it was around March, and it was time to go. And being nicer, spent a lot more time outside. And of course, when we were outside, we didn't feel as sick or angry, that kind of thing. So I finished off the university year. We were pretty much unscathed. Nothing really bad happened to us physically, just mentally. Well, not that that's any better, but once we left, we remained friends, and everything in our lives went back to normal. I didn't bring anything home with me, but I will never, ever, as you can tell, ever forget what happened there. And I think that's my first real serious haunted house that I lived in. And I've thought about over the years, man, what were you thinking with the satanic ritual house downstairs moving in? And why did you stay, and all these other things? And what caused it? Was it this weird family that lived there? Was it from the satanic stuff downstairs, or was it just because it was an old home and other stuff was going on? It kind of felt dark and scary, but I wonder if that was my inexperience and my age. I'm not sure. I have never come across a home like that since. So yeah, that's my story about living in a crazy haunted house while I was in university. I have a few more like that, and of course other stories, and I'll talk about them from time to time during this podcast. The next episode is going to be about two very haunted islands, one being Poveglia Island in Italy, and the second, Corregidor Island in the Philippines. Come join me. These stories are wild. You can find me on Twitter at DisembodiedPod. I have a Facebook group called Disembodied and an Instagram called DisembodiedPod or at DisembodiedPod. So I look forward to telling more of these stories, and this is the place to come to get your boo on. Take care, stay spooky, and know that just maybe someone is watching you.